This is Paul Schneiderman today in the 99th edition of Sports Untold on Rainier Avenue Radio. And I have a very special guest today, my Rainier Avenue Radio friend and colleague, Rick DuPree. Rick is currently the Rainier Avenue Radio Sports Programming Director. Rick hosts a show with former Seahawk Edwin Bailey. He's also hosted a show one-on-one with Dupe. Rick currently works as an educator at Northwest School. He's worked as a sports broadcaster at KJR AM 950 in Seattle, and I believe a few other networks. Rick's also a former Husky football player, and he played in the Arena Football League. Rick worked in the Supersonics organization at one time.
You've done some research, right?
We've talked over the years, so I'm having a little fun going through your resume. But right. And we've had the pleasure of co-hosting 3 shows together. But today I can get you in the hot seat, Rick. But thanks for coming on the 99th edition of Sports Untold on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Man, that is congratulations, number one, 99 episodes. That I remember when we were talking about you starting to do this, and now here we are. So congratulations. And that is just a big accomplishment. So happy that you are still at it.
Well, Rick, I want to say something. You have mentored me throughout this process. In those earlier days, I was asking you some basic questions about interviewing skills and just just learning the ropes. I remember I watched you do an interview with Eric Metcalf. You invited me in to watch you do one before I started. So you've been very helpful, and I appreciate your support and friendship throughout my little middle-age experience here. So
you're both my pleasure. You know, that's the beauty of Rainier Avenue Radio is that whether you have years of experience or no experience, the opportunity to get on the air and to really represent the viewpoints of the community. And so you are a living testament to the vision that Tony B had when we talked about Rainier Avenue Radio starting. So it is really cool to see.
Well, that means a lot, Rick. I take my compliments where they come. So thank you so much. Rick, I want to just kind of go into a little bit of your life journey, your biography. Then we're going to hit on some hot sports topics. But I want to kind of get your background, Rick, on what got you into the sports media business, and then tell us what got you into education.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm the youngest 5 boys, and my oldest brother, David. David's 16 years older than I am. And David played for the University of Washington in the late 60s under Jim Owens. And that whole era didn't play his senior year, but David got an opportunity to, many people may remember John Owen, the former Seattle PI columnist. And they were looking for, Black journalists. And again, you're talking late 60s now. And so David got an opportunity, and there were very few, if any, Black sports writers or writers, I should say, just journalists, much less sports. And so David got his start. And I think looking up to my older brother, number one was certainly something that attracted me, to it. I remember, I think I was 11 years old and spent the portion of the summer with him. And he got an interview had an interview with a William Randolph Hearst newspaper, the San Francisco Examiner. And I'll never forget, he took me to the interview, and I was in this big building for the first time, wow, and looking out and overlooking the city. And so I waited in this conference room, or maybe it was a lobby, I don't remember, but all I remember is that it had these big windows and I could look out and see the city, and he did his interview. So that's something that has stuck with me. And David went on to have an incredible career. When he retired, was recognized a year or so before he retired, recognized with the Kurt Gowdy Award as the top print journalist. And that was a ceremony that happened at the Basketball Hall of Fame. So a lot of pride there. And then I think as I, got into, always played sports, started at Rainier Playfield. And as an 8-year-old, and playing football, and sports was always a big part. But my parents were really strict, and they said, if your grades are not where they should be, if you're not doing well in school, you can't play. So they always emphasize that with all of us, me being the youngest. And so, as my career in athletics and football was the sport I wanted to. As I look back, I might change that, but that's a whole other story.
Well, you play University of Washington. We're going to talk about a couple minutes. So you had a run. So
yeah. I tell you, football is I tell people it's not if you're going to get injured, it's when. But with that said, had a career, went to Ingram High School, so lived in Mount Baker area. My parents bought the house in 1961, 3 blocks up the street or 4 blocks up the street from Franklin on
Sure.
31st Avenue.
Not too far from where I live now. Yeah.
In that Mount Baker area. But I was bused out to Ingram. The mandatory busing program actually started my junior year, but I was a transfer my sophomore year. My neighbor was out there. He was 2 years ahead of me. He said, man, you should transfer. He went out there. And I didn't think I'd get a chance to play football at Franklin under Byron Johnson, who, what all my friends were telling me, didn't like little guys. And so I was like, okay, I'll never get a chance to play. And Ron Cookie Jackson, who went on to have a great career at University of Washington. We played together off the Little League, what was there. So I was like, look, I'm not going to get a chance. And I think it was at that point, and one of my teachers, Pat Ripley, I worked on the school newspaper and did some things on the yearbook. And that kind of, to a certain degree, ignited that interest in journalism and what have you. And then, like I said, with David, and at that time, David was with the Washington Post. And so, that experience in high school, and it kind of shaped, okay, what I thought I wanted to do. And I kind of was patterning my career after who I looked up to, number 32 in Buffalo, O.J. Simpson. And I wanted to play football and then parlay my career into broadcasting afterward. And a guy who has done that seamlessly, two guys actually that have done that seamlessly, Michael Strahan, but locally, Nate Burleson. And Nate Burleson doing just a phenomenal job. So that was kind of my vision. And a funny story, when I was with the UW, I started out at Florida A&M, and one of the reasons I went to FAMU is I wanted to go somewhere sunny. And so there's a criteria, Paul. I didn't have a college counselor telling me. I look up at Seattle Academy now. We've got 6 people in our college advising department, but I wanted to go somewhere sunny. Wanted to play football. FAMU had won the 1AA national championship the year before. Rudy Hubbard was their coach. They didn't recruit me, but I went and walked on, and they had gotten a huge federal grant, and I was going into journalism. And Mr. Ruggles, I think was his name, the chair of the program, and they said, hey, write this essay, and depending on that, we may have a shot. So I wrote this essay and submitted all the paperwork, and lo and behold, I got a full academic scholarship to go to FAMU. So went there part of my freshman year, but wanted to play D1 ball and missed home and all those things. So came back home and redshirted a year. But my first year being eligible, we played in the inaugural Aloha Bowl. And great game. Tim Cowan hit Anthony Allen for 3 scores, and we beat Maryland. I want to say it was 21-20, maybe. But
Remember it well.
Yeah. And Anthony Allen was just recognized as one of the legends a couple of weeks ago at Memorial Stadium at the Memorial Classic. But anyway, interesting story is that a young reporter, so my brother David was at the Washington Post, but a young reporter that had graduated from Northwestern, which was a school I was looking at, by the name of Mike Wilbon, was working at the Washington Post and was covering Maryland. And David said, hey, my brother plays for UW. Maybe want to talk to him and do a story. Anyway, long story short, ended up doing a story that appeared in the Washington Post. I was a backup player, but Mike, interviewed me pretty extensively for that story. And that was a kind of a big piece, getting the Husky perspective, obviously, going back to the Maryland, fans. So yeah, that was pretty fun.
And tell us a little bit about your UW playing days, Rick. Any couple fun Husky memories you can share?
Yeah, they're quite. My position coach, Don James. I tell you what, I have never to this day, and I'm 59 years old, have never been associated with anyone that paid more attention to detail. And Don, the way Don ran the program is he coached the coaches, and then the position coaches coached us. So we didn't necessarily have a whole lot of personal interaction with Don, but Don, one thing Don did is, and this is back in the day of the film, they would splice together all of the kicking game plays in every game. And Monday, before practice, we would go in this film room, and the entire team was there, and Don ran that himself. and he critiqued every single kicking game play, and that's, he talked about that was a difference maker. We had to win the kicking game every week. I'll never forget that. But Al Roberts, who now coaches at O'Day High School, coached with Hugh Campbell at Edmonton and the Houston Oilers and NFL for years, now has come back in his mid 70s and is there with Monty Kohler at O'Day. Al was my position coach. And he was one of the individuals that has had a significant, played a significant role, big impact in my life and just life lessons. And so Al would, I remember we would go down in the weight room. And Al was probably in his 30s then, I'm guessing. Yeah, it had to be. And we would do, I'll never do this, Paul. And Al would lead the way. We would do squats with 315 pounds, 10 reps, 10 sets of 10 reps. We'd run the stadium stairs. Al would be leading the way. And it was so much fun. I learned so much from him about how to motivate people. And he talked to me, he said, Rick, you have to be sometimes a parent, a coach. Sometimes you got to be a tough guy. Sometimes you got to put your arm around. So I really learned from him is that it was up to me as an individual to read if I'm coaching or motivating people, what they needed. And it wasn't a one size fits all. So that was fun, but probably the one memory I have, and it'll give you an idea of Don James and how much he pays attention to detail. So my sophomore year, I redshirted, and my sophomore year, I was, I think, the only walk-on that was traveling. But fast forward to the Aloha Bowl, and everybody was healthy. So we had Jacques Robinson, we had Sterling Hines, Cookie Jackson. So I think I was running number 4. So I'm not going to see any talent. We're in Hawaii, Christmas Day game. It's hot. And back in those days, we used to wear the nylon kind of stirrup socks, kind of the baseball socks.
Right.
And oh man, I hated those. My legs would just itch. And I hated it. So I'm like, and part of my grandma, I ain't playing. I ain't got to wear them. So I'm in the locker room. I don't put them on. And I kid you not, Paul, Don James walks past me, does not look at me, but in passing says, Rick, better put those stirrups if you want to get on the field. And I'm like, what? How did he know? He knew that I did not have the stirrup socks. He said, you better put those on, or else you're not going on the field. I'm like, I can't believe this dude. So yeah, he was a guy that, again, just so meticulous and attention to detail, and that forced us, again, like I said, just the experience with the kicking game we would have after, I don't know if it was after every practice, I can't remember, or if it was just after the Thursday practice going into the weekend game, but we would go through all of the kicking games. So how a lot of times you see, even at the pro levels, man, maybe not the pros too much, but college, I see it, high school definitely, where they don't have enough guys out on the field for a kicking game. We would go through everything. Hands team. So if we were expecting a team to kick an onside kick, there were guys that were supposed to be there. So we would just run it, and he would just call out whether it's field goal, kick return, hands team, whatever, and you'd have to get out there. And trust me, if you forgot you were supposed to be out there, you weren't listening, you paid the price for that. So yeah, Don was no joke.
Great stories. Paul Schnarman on the 99th edition of Sports Untold on Rainier Avenue Radio with my Rainier Avenue Radio colleague and fellow host, Rick DuPree. Rick, you mentioned Al Roberts has been a mentor to you, and I want to mention something to you. I've had quite a few shows where Don James has been discussed with former players. I had Skip Hall on last week, and I've never heard anybody say anything negative about Don James as a coach. People say he was tough and all that, but I've never heard anybody ever. He's all like his approval rating among his former players and former coaches must be literally about 100%.
Yeah, I think, again, part of it is that Don was the type of guy, like I said earlier, he coached the coaches. So the players, at least when you were playing, didn't necessarily have as close a relationship with him as you did with your position coach. So I mentioned Al, a guy who I had, a tremendous relationship with. But yeah, Don, you couldn't help but respect him because his knowledge of the game, his commitment, I've said this a couple of times already, his attention to detail, and that's what he demanded of you. And that's why those teams, you look at that program changed under Don James. Washington had, you go back in the 60s and, it had some Rose Bowl appearances and what have you, but it went from a program that had some good years to a program that was perennially at the top of, college football. And obviously back then, Pac-10 when I played, now Pac-12, but, Pac-8, Pac-10, And they were year in and year out. And obviously that back in the day, the pinnacle was playing in the Rose Bowl. And obviously I think back to that Rose Bowl win, over Michigan and just, yeah, I mean, that turned the tables. And our, Bruce Harrell, who's running for mayor, who likely will be our next mayor, was a star on that team. And Joe Steele, who played against Bruce at Blanchette, and probably the greatest game ever played at Memorial Stadium, standing room only packed when Blanchette beat Garfield in 4 overtimes. You had some great players, Warren Moon, the quarterback, and that changed the program. And it became a program that year in and year out was at the top of the Pac-10, but also in the national rankings. I remember my sophomore year, we were ranked number 1. And I want to say it was probably through 5-ish weeks. And we went down to Stanford, and this game was nationally televised on CBS. And there was a guy that wore number 7 by the name of John Elway.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. A few people heard of him. And Paul, all I can say is he, along with Vincent White, number 22, the running back, they picked us. I think Vincent White had a punt return for a touchdown. And Elway, I sat there on the sidelines, and it was amazing because our defense was tough. I mean, we had Scott Garnett, Kenny Driscoll, Mark Stewart, Ray Horton, Vince Newsom, Vince Albert. I mean, we were loaded. We were loaded, and we would get pressure on him. And our defense, I mean, they were, yeah. I mean, that's all I can say. They were something special. And they would put pressure on Elway, and Elway would spit out of it. And all of a sudden, it's like, he's over here and the defense is over there, buys himself some time. And, he had that laser.
He was a talent, no doubt.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that was an experience. And we, unfortunately, on national TV lost and we're knocked out of the number 1 spot. But that was an experience I'll never forget. And being on the campus there in Palo Alto at Stanford was that was a special memory.
Rick, you mentioned that you were a walk-on player. Did you eventually get a scholarship at University of Washington?
I did not. So I, again, that sophomore year, so I redshirted, transferring from Florida A&M, which is where I started out. And I played that sophomore year. And as I mentioned, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the only walk-on player that was traveling. So I got some playing time. Not a lot. I think I want to say somewhere between 12 to 15 or so carries. Probably the best game I had was, I got some time and had a fairly long run against University of Oregon. That was before Oregon was really good. But, I was the type of guy that I wanted to play. And not that I'm not a team player, but I want to play. So I went and talked to Coach James after the season. And I said, hey, it's important. I mean, I want to be, part of this team in a way that I'm contributing, on Saturdays. And, what's the likelihood? And he said, in short, he was real honest. And he said, he didn't see the likelihood of me moving up and being in a position to get a lot of playing time. So at that time, I decided to stop playing. And I finished up, got my degree in broadcast communications. I still had the itch and wanted to play. And so I started playing local semi-pro league, the West Seattle Warhawks, Randy Jackaway, and was playing there for a couple of years. And then this new league called Arena Football started. And some people may remember Mouse Davis. He was, I think, the architect of the run and shoot. He was at Portland State, and I want to say I think it was Detroit. Paul, don't quote me on that, but I can't remember. He in the pro. But anyway, he was I think director of player personnel for the Arena League, and I had written letters to all of the NFL teams trying to get a tryout, and the only team that responded back and offered something was the New York Giants, and they had just won the Super Bowl. And so on my own dime, flew back to East Rutherford, and it was an open tryout at Giant Stadium, and there were probably 200 some odd players there. And I was in probably the best shape of my life. And
that's quite a story, drills. Rick. I didn't know you try out for the Giants. That's
yeah. And so they ran us through these drills, and there were probably 40-ish running backs there. And they ran us through drills, catching the ball, this, that, and the other, ran to 40. Then they cut it down. They cut it down to 5. and I was one of the 5 on there. And I'm like, okay, we got a shot here. Unfortunately didn't, wasn't offered a contract or whatever. But from that, the Arena League contacted me, or I can't remember if I contacted them, but Mouse Davis, they were pretty far into, this was the first year, they were pretty far into their process, but Mouse Davis, being from Portland, was going to be back in Portland. And they said, look, if you can get down to, maybe Liberty Park or whatever, some park just across, the bridge there when you get into Portland. So if you can get down there, on Saturday this time, he'll work you out. And he had one other guy there, some track guy that was from Oregon. And, I kind of ran circles around the guy. He was trying to cover me, and I was catching the ball and outran, and then he was supposed to be some, So anyway, within a couple of days, they contacted me and invited me to camp. And so went back to Wheaton College in Wheaton, Illinois. Mm-hmm. And we had the tryouts there. The camp. And that first season, there were 4 teams. There were Denver, Chicago, Pittsburgh, and Washington, D.C. And I was drafted and selected by Bob Harrison, who had been the receiver coach at Atlanta with the Falcons. He was the head coach of the Washington Commandos. And so that's kind of how I...
How many years did you play in the Arena League, Rick? How many years were you in the Arena League, Rick?
Well, unfortunately, the second game of that season, I suffered a torn ACL. And was making a block, and our quarterback dove for the first down. Unfortunately, he dove right on my knee. And so... Yeah, that kind of ended that, but it was.
He had a run in pro football. That's pretty neat. That's pretty. Paul Schneiderman again, host of Sports Untold, the 99th edition with Rick DuPree. Would you say, is Kurt Warner the most famous player to come out of the Arena Leagues? Who later became, I believe, a Hall of Fame quarterback? Is he's a big guy who played in the Arena League, right?
Yeah.
Is he the biggest name? Do you think that?
Yeah, I would think so, and just the success that he had. In the NFL. Yeah, right. Without a doubt.
Kurt Warner, yeah. Because when I think of the Arena League, I think of you, but I also think of Kurt Warner. So you're a good company. You're a good company.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. You're probably one of the few that puts me in with his name.
Well, no, but I knew that you played in the Arena League. Hey, Rick, in the early 90s, I remember listening to you. We got maybe an 8 or 9 year age difference. I remember listening to you in the early 90s, like my college years when you were at KJR. And I believe you co-hosted a show with Kevin Calabro. Can you talk about working with Kevin and just a little bit about those early 90s KJR years a little bit?
Yeah. So KJR in 1989 made the decision that they wanted to go into sports talk. And people from here, KJR was in the top 40s, and Pat O'Day, who you allowed me to come on and co-host your show one time with Pat O'Day.
We'll never forget that. A couple years before he died. Yeah,
man, that was just an experience.
That was fun.
And I remember Pat, because Pat was he was such a big name there, but he also was associated with the Hydros. And I'll never forget. I think I told you this before. Pat, had I think drinking or was very, very, very open about being a recovered alcoholic, I believe. And he did a commercial for Shiseido, and I'll never forget. He started the commercial. Hey, this is Pat O'Day, Mayor of Rose Harbor. Big deal. Who cares? And then we go on. Right. He was such a cool guy. But anyway, so KJR wanted to make the move to sports talk. So we literally it was the early summer of 1989. Kevin Calabro was the voice of the Sonics, and I believe the year before was kind of Bob Blackburn's last year as the voice, if I'm not mistaken. They would split some duties kind of in the transition. And so we started the show, and Kevin was the host, and I was hired as executive director. Jim Rupp, who was the former PR director for the Sonics, we had worked together, knew me, from my days at Como TV. And he recommended me to KJR. So I came on board and was executive producer of the show. It was a 1-hour show called Callin' All Sports, CALLIN', Callin' All Sports. And Kevin was the host until the basketball season started. And then Bob Blackburn came and took over. And what we did, Bob's overall knowledge of all the sports wasn't, at the level Kevin's was. So we had co-hosts that were sports writers with Bob as well. And that worked out really well because Bob was just so professional, so good, and was just is a legend here in Seattle. And so that was a lot of fun. And Bob actually is the reason I got on the air. I mean, I wanted to get on the air, wasn't getting the opportunity. And finally, Bob said, you know what? just come on and co-host with me. And so, I mean, I have him to thank for that, because he said, he basically, you know, screw management, whatever, I'm going to give you this opportunity. And so went on with him, and that's how I started getting some on air. And then I actually co-hosted a show with Gasman, you know, worked with Nancy Dinellen, the fabulous sports babe. And I remember we brought Graz on. I'll never forget the story. Graz was just so, I mean, he was just such a natural. And, you know, we got him on. I remember, you know, I had a pretty significant role at that time. And Bob Hogan, I believe, was our general manager. Hey, we got this tape with this guy. He hosts the Raiders, you know, pregame, postgame show, what have you. And let me hear the tape, what have you. And it was Graz, and ended up offering Graz a job. Well, years later, really got to know Graz. He said, yeah, man. He said, man, I was the board operator for this, I think it was a morning show. He said, I filled in for one guy. That's the tape I sent. You know, but it was a great hire. And those are the early days where, you know, it was just, we were just kind of flying by the seat of our pants. And but got a great stable of talent in there, and it was just a lot of fun.
Fun names: Blackburn, Calabro, Grosby, Gasso, the fabulous sports babe. It's fun to hear about all these folks that you worked with, and I remember really listening to you in those days. So it's fun.
But Paul, and you had asked. I mean, I'll say this: working with Kevin was a dream. I mean, Kevin, you know, he just his sports knowledge, but he brought, for lack of a better way to put it, a level of humanity. And I think where you saw that most, and I think to this day, I still feel like, in my opinion, for me, the best play-by-play team was Kevin Calabro and Marcus Johnson, because those guys, they got along so well. They were, you know, and they had so much fun, and you never knew what they might talk about. They might be talking about Parliament and Funkadelic, and they're bringing, you know, I mean,
they were fun.
They would just bring some stuff in, and so Kevin. Just the ultimate, you know, professional, and just I mean, whether, you know, he crosses the wickets, or, you know, the leather and the lead, or, you know, I mean, he had all of these different terms, and it was so much fun to work, you know, with him. And like I said, Bob, I just owe, you know, my career to, because he's the one who went out on the limb and said, I'm going to give you the opportunity. And I will be forever, you know, grateful, you know, for him. And another name that didn't mention earlier, but when I was at the UW, you know, knowing that I wanted to go into TV and would have developed a relationship with Bruce King, who was the sports director at Como.
Yep.
Yes. And Bruce was, Como had the Husky contract at the time, and they had the Husky highlight show. And I just introduced myself to him and said, hey, you know, this is what I want to do. And when I stopped playing, I reached back out to him, and he hired me to work weekends. And so I was working weekends as Rick Meter, his sports producer, and worked with Rick and Harry Sloan. And, you know, I actually met Steve Poole and Connie Thompson earlier when I was in school, and looked up to them as, you know, the two of the few, they may have been the only Black on-air people at that time. And both were really supportive. I was writing a paper when I was at the UW, and, you know, I got to interview them and what have you. But Bruce gave me that opportunity. And Rick, I learned so much. You know, Rick was a guy that's just meticulous. Oh my goodness, attention to detail. And I learned. I mean, he taught me how to edit. And we'd have those 3/4-inch tapes at that time. But I honed my craft under him. And, you know, people would say, oh, he's hard to work for. Well, Rick expected. He expected quality work, and not perfection, you know, but close to it. But I mean, you know, I paid attention to detail. I listened, and I worked hard, and so we got along great. You know, we were great people. Oh, Rick, yeah, man. Well, you know, you're in there, you work hard, you do your job, and that's all he was asking. You know, and a lot of people come in, you know, and I mean, you know, people come in and they kind of half do it and what have you. And Rick was the type of guy, he wasn't gonna put up with that. And so we got along really, really well, because like I said, he was a great coach, a great mentor. And you know, I worked hard and wanted to learn, but I was dedicated. And so really learned. And I remember later in my career, if you remember George Johnson, the center played at Golden State.
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
He finished his career with the Sonics. And I think it may have been the last year of his career, interested in TV. And so he came over and was working over at Como. And I got a chance to meet George and get to know him and work together with him. So just some cool memories of different people that I was able to meet and have experiences with throughout my career.
It's fun to hear all these names in the past. Paul Schneiderman, again, host of Sports Untold on Rainier Avenue Radio with Rick DuPree. Rick, I want to back up as part of your career when you work for the Seattle Supersonics. And can you share with the listeners and myself the type of duties you had when you work for the Sonics, and maybe share a couple of memories of your Sonics years when you're employed by the NBA or former NBA franchise?
Yeah, that was a dream job. Boy, I tell you.
Oh, I bet.
I was working somewhere, and one of the 3 times in my career I was fired, so I was unemployed. And I knew Wally Walker and ran into Wally Walker when the Sonics and Storm Foundation was doing the court. At Green Lake, and this was the when they came in, and we used to do that a lot. And I talked to Wally and said, man, I just threw out some ideas to him. He said, let me have you talk to some people. This was in 2004. And he set up a meeting with some of his marketing folks, and I came in and talked with them, and so we shared some of the ideas I had just in terms of community, but more so working with the players, supporting players. Unbeknownst to me at the time is that the NBA back in 2001, David Stern had started a program basically called Player Development. And what it was is that each of the NBA franchises was going to hire either an individual or create a staff of basically support for the players. So, something that was there in the best interest of the players was going to help them, whether it be with financial stuff or just, vetting things, whatever the case may be. And 3 years later, only 15 of the 30 teams had a department or a position, that position filled. And so I had no idea of all this. And so the timing, as a Christian, I'm like, well, that's how God works, but the timing was perfect. Talked with some folks, in the marketing department, and threw out some ideas, and they said, okay, well, we'll get back to you. And literally 2 weeks later, they get back in contact with me, because they didn't have a job description or anything. And they created a job description based on everything I said. So essentially, right. I created my own job and was hired on there. And so in the role of, the title was Director of Player Resources, but really was to be a resource for the players, whether it be putting together a guide for the families when they come in, to take a look at communities and schools, if they had kids and that type of thing, to bring in, I would bring in financial, individuals that would talk about, investing and things like that. So guys had a sense, and it's interesting, you really focus more on the younger guys, but I remember Nick Collison was a guy Nick was probably in his second, maybe third year at that time, but really paid attention and took advantage of those resources as well. So that was a lot of fun. So my first couple of years in particular, traveled with the team. Any of the road trips that were like maybe 3 games or more, and longer road trips. And it was really just a way to get to know the guys and be around. In a position like that, you have to develop trust, and they got to know that you're there for their best interest. And so that took time, but a couple of guys have really developed relationships with, Luke Ridenour, just because our commonality of being Christians. We developed a good relationship. We'll get together and pray together sometimes. And Damian Wilkins, many people may remember Damian, the son of a Gerald Wilkins, Dominique Wilkins' brother. And so Damian was Dominique's nephew, but we kind of hit a relationship and just really connected. And I'll never forget one time he looked at me and said, man, you're from down south. Man, DuPree, they work you like a mule. So we had some good times.
Were you kind of like a counselor of the players, Rick? Kind of like a avuncular figure?
Of sorts, yeah. And you just, and really it was one of those things where it was just important to develop a relationship. And I think once you develop the relationship and trust, then you're able to, be there as a resource, as a support for the guys. The big guys on the team at that time were Ray and Allen and Rashard Lewis. They were the big guns. And Ray was just, you talk about the ultimate professional. And I'll give you an example. We would do season ticket holder events, and Ray would go around, especially the ones, we have the more intimate ones, And he would go around to every table and say hello, shake people's hands, make them, he understood the business side of it. But it was around the time where NBA Cares was really getting big. And so the league wanted the players wearing, polos, and they sent all these polos and, the NBA Cares, and they wanted to brand it. And Ray refused to wear it. And he said, a couple of reasons. Number one, didn't fit his decor. I mean, that's just me talking out here, but Ray was impeccably dressed all the time. But he said, I am a person, a human being outside of being a basketball player. And I think, that's so true. And so he did what he needed to do, represented the team, the league, but he said, I'm still an individual and I want people to see me, not a basketball player. So he made that distinction. But yeah, I remember we used to do an event at the top of the Space Needle. And there were a couple players. I don't know if people remember Reggie Evans, rebounding machine.
Oh yeah, he can play defense too.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And Reggie was like, Rick, I ain't getting on that glass elevator and going. He said, I'll do whatever you need me to do down here, but I'm not going on the elevator. So it's just fun stuff
heights.
like that. Yeah.
I want to ask Rick, or get your thoughts on this. And I was a big Sonics fan, and I really enjoyed watching Ray Allen. And when I watched Ray Allen and heard him speak, he kind of reminded me of an NBA player from a different era. He reminded me of a little bit of like Lenny Wilkins a bit. Was Ray kind of beyond his years in some ways? I don't know. He just something about Ray Allen. I remember I said to my stepfather one game, there's something about watching Ray Allen. He just seems like you're kind of watching like a prominent NBA player from maybe the 1970s era or 60s era. I don't know.
Ray had, you might take on it, Ray had a work ethic. And all the, I mean, don't get me wrong. Any individual that makes it to the professional level, I don't care in any sport, there's a work ethic and a talent and a gift and what have you. But there's a work ethic once you get there. And so unfortunately, you see a lot of guys that will make it and they relax. And to give you a couple of examples, so Ray was known for, he would get to the arena a couple hours before everybody else, and he would put up hundreds of shots. And I'll never forget, he told me one time, he said, Rick, he said, when I'm on the court, and I've shared this, I've coached, since then, I share this with every team that I coach. He said, when I'm on the court, I'm taking game shots. I'm doing what I'm going to do in the game. I'm not going to do this stuff that, taking out, throwing the ball. No, he said, I'm working on game shots. And so he gets to the arena a couple hours early. He's coming off screens because, Nate McMillan in particular used to run, kind of doubles. Ray would set up on one side. He'd have a screen down on the low block. He would come through the key and have a double screen on the other block, and then come around. Ray would work on getting the ball, catching and shooting and what have you. This dude, I mean, there were practices where, I mean, this guy would not miss shots. And when he missed a shot, I was like, man, I didn't expect you to miss, I mean, that's how good he was. And you think about it, and then you look at Steph Curry, and these guys I mean, they're just at a different level. So his work ethic, and I'll never forget, I think it was Donovan Brown. Denham Brown went to Connecticut, and Ray went to Connecticut. And Denham was a rookie, and I'll never forget, Ray pulled me out one time, and he said, Rick, just go watch Denham. And it was in pre-games, and Denham, throwing up shots, throwing half-court shots, messing around. And I thought back to Ray, said, I'm only working on game shots, and not that Ray had anything to do with this, but the next day Denham got cut. And again, you talk about a mentality. People talk about Kobe and his work ethic, and I'll never forget. Kevin Durant, obviously people may forget, but Kevin Durant's rookie year and Jeff Green, they were Sonics. That's and right. I did a number of things with those guys, Read to Achieve events. But when Colangelo kind of started revamping the Olympic once, when the U.S. lost, and so created kind of the main team, and then had a feeder team, and Jeff and Kevin were on that feeder team. I think it was after the rookie year. And as the story goes, they were there and they got a day off, but the two of them go to the gym, but somebody was there already. And there's a guy by the name of Kobe Bryant, a work ethic that surpasses most people's. I mean, and Ray was that kind of guy.
The kind of guy. Yeah. Rick, I want to get some more subjects here. And the Husky football team, the program a bit. The 2021 Huskies are 2-2 right now. That a very brutal loss against Montana to start the season. So here's my question for you. I want you to put on the Rick DuPree crystal ball. When this season is over, will the UW loss against Montana be seen as a bad aberration for the UW football program, or is it a sign the team had some very serious holes or something in between? How do you think we're going to look at this Montana loss when the 2021 Husky football season is over?
I honestly think it's going to be, to a certain degree, a telltale sign of the program has got some growing and some improving to do. I think it'll be seen more as an aberration, though. Honestly, I don't think it's going to be, a sign that the program has sunken. And I like Jimmy Lake. I like he motivates guys and what have you. But the program, it is not a top tier program. That's just the bottom line. And when you go out and you get manhandled and what have you, you've got to go back and you've got to get some more athletes. You've got to get they got some good players, but you've got to get some great players at skill positions. Quarterback, running back, receivers, and that's important. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they're got to go back to the drawing board with recruiting and what have you. But I don't feel like the program has dropped off. But under Peterson, they had some really, really good years under Chris Peterson. And it was tough. Kind of for Jimmy Lake coming in the way he came in and what have you. But I certainly expect to see. I hope that the media and more importantly the administration at UW gives him time. It's unfortunate, but you don't see Black coaches get the opportunity and the patience and that white coaches do, and it's unfortunate. But you got to produce regardless. Don't get me wrong, but I hope they give him time and allow him to do his recruiting, bring in the types of players he wants, and create the type of program that mirrors who he is. And I think a great coach, is going to recruit and that type of talent that is going to be able to run the type of system that they want to run. But it's always important, I think, that a coach understands the talent that he has. And then you coach to that talent and not make that talent conform, to the program. And I think a good example of that was, UW was really, really good under Don James. UW won a national championship when Don James brought Keith Gilbertson in, and they went to a short passing game and opened up that offense. And so I think when Keith came on board, you saw even more so, especially the offense, looked at the talents that the players had and played to those talents and gifts. And that was the direction they went, in contrast to saying, this is our system, and regardless of who we have, you got to fit in the system.
Rick, I didn't think it was fair when the Huskies were 0-2, some people calling for the firing of Jimmy Lake. I said, let's give this man a chance. We were 3-1 during the pandemic season last year. So I didn't agree with those calls. And I understand your points. Rick, I am on a high horse. These are two questions I have asked many guests, and I'm gonna ask you these questions. Paul Schneiderman again on Sports Untold, the 99th edition with Rick DuPree. The first question is, and let me give you a few answers I've received this question and give you some clues to your answers. So I've received the answers of LeBron James, Serena Williams, Joe Montana, Nick Saban, Floyd, actually Grosby answered Floyd Merriweather. List goes on of different, Steve Rabel and Granville Emerson from our station answered Bill Russell. Who's a living sports figure you would love to have an interview or conversation with?
Oh, I think without a doubt, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He is, you look at what his career has spanned. Just not only what he accomplished on the court, but now off the court. Is just phenomenal. And I mentioned my brother David earlier, and David being in that era, David played against O.J. Simpson and, those guys, at that time, Lou Alcindor at UCLA and what have you. But David said, he said, Kareem is one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. He didn't say one of the most intelligent athletes. He said one of the most intelligent people. And if you look at, he produced a documentary recently and talking about different movements and what have you. And he's moving in that direction. You look at his thoughtful comments and, some of the occurrences that have happened. I mean, not only following George Floyd's murder, but just so many of his thoughtful comments and quotes. And it would just, I would love to hear from him and just be able to extensively hear from him what motivates him, what drives him, because he, in my opinion, has always seen himself as larger, no pun intended, but larger than an athlete. And I think back to I think it was the movie Game of Death. He was a student of Bruce Lee's, and in the movie with Bruce Lee, and I mean, he was doing things that were very atypical of what you would expect from a 7-foot basketball player. And he just brought so much more to the table than his athletic skills.
Steve Kelly gave the same answer, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, to my question about living sports be like challenge. You're the second person mentioned Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. One thing I sense about Kareem, Rick, is he doesn't seem like he takes any polls when he gives opinions on things, whether it's the vaccine. He spoke out very strongly against anti-Semitism recently. He seems to have, he's his own guy, isn't he?
He is. There's this iconic photo of him, Jim Brown, Bill Russell, Muhammad Ali, and I think Rayford Johnson. It was back in when the Black athletes were standing up and saying, wait a minute, around the time of the Mexico Olympics, when Tommy Smith and John Carlos, stood there on the podium with their arms raised, and the fist clenched. And so he's always been one of those athletes. And again, I mean, the guys I mentioned, you talk about Russell and Jim Brown and Muhammad Ali. Those guys transcend their sport, and they knew and know that they have a bigger calling and a role they can play to make humanity better, and they're not afraid of what may happen to them, and I think that's significant. And it's interesting. I think I've shared with you before, but I've shared on there. My son and I were working on a documentary on the Seattle chapter of the Black Panther Party, and Aaron and Elmer Dixon, who are 72 and 71 now, I believe, and were the founders of. They're 16 months apart, but as we're about a little more than a year into this, and I'm going to show you here. But anyway, a little more than a year into this, but.
You have some great stuff in your office, right? I'm looking at the
posters. I'll talk about that.
Looks like a museum. Yeah.
I'll say this real quick. Is that as we've interviewed people upon this relates to why I say Kareem, and I think of people like Jim Brown would be another I'd love to talk to. And you look at Jim Brown's career and the I'll talk about that in just a second. But my point is, a number of the people in the Black Panther Party I talked to said, they were teenagers. They said, we didn't expect to live beyond 25. And
wow,
for individuals to make a life commitment like that, to make humanity better, to make things for their people better, and that's what those guys, Kareem, Jim Brown, who else did I say? I'm drawing a blank now. Muhammad Ali and Bill Russell, what have you, and it's funny because you look at Jim Brown, and Jim Brown, Barry Sanders is very similar to this, but Jim Brown was the greatest running back of his time, without question. He was 29 years old when he retired. And when he retired, he led the NFL in rushing and touchdowns, I believe, and walked away. And then went ahead and made some movies, and had love scenes with I think with Stella Stevens and Raquel Welch or whatever, that people weren't too happy about in the 70s. Right. And Jim Brown basically said, don't worry about it. So I mean, those types of people, again, really, I think are.
Rick, let me throw out a name of a living sports figure I would love to chat with is Willie Mays.
Yeah,
that's a name. I mean, I know Willie. I don't think he's as much as activist type as maybe Jim Brown or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but Willie Mays I think would be a fascinating guy to talk to. All right, Rick. Here's another similar question. I've received Muhammad Ali from several guests. I've received Babe Ruth. I've received Kobe Bryant. Who's a deceased person in sports history you'd love to have chatted with or had a conversation with?
Muhammad Ali, without a doubt. I mean, he was such. My brother Paul, who's 5 years older than I am.
He's got a great first name, by the way.
Yeah. He was, I can't remember how old, but played Little League baseball. With Bruce Harrell's brother, Clayton. I did Bruce may play on the team, but anyway, in the central area, and he tells a story about they were out there practicing, and Muhammad Ali is in town. He stops and comes out and plays with them. Muhammad Ali did that kind of stuff. He just, people gravitated toward him, and he clearly was not, nobody is the perfect individual, perfect human being, but again, here's someone again who made a commitment in his life, but he was so adored and loved by so many people. I would say one other person I would have to say is not an athlete. Was it an athlete, or was it just a person?
You could, mention someone else. I'm focused on athletes, but mention a deceased person.
And you kind of see it in the book. If I can get this book right here, that's Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. Malcolm X would be the other person. The reason Malcolm X is because here's a person who turned his life around, and then he had this commitment to the Nation of Islam, and then he went to Mecca and he changed his thought and said, I prayed there with blonde-haired, blue-eyed people that believe the same that I believe in. So he was man enough. He had enough integrity to say I was wrong and change that. And I really appreciate that.
Malcolm X wrote that he met some white Muslims that he liked, and that had an effect on him, didn't it? Yeah.
It really did.
Mecca. Yeah.
And I think probably, cost him, among other things, his life. And many say that it was, the nation that who knows, it's unsolved or supposedly, but yeah, he was just a person that, I was talking to someone the other day and I said, man, what if JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, all of these individuals had not been assassinated? Where would we be today? Where would we be?
That's fascinating questions. Paul Schneiderman, host of Sports Untold, the 99th edition with Rick DuPree. Rick, the Mariners are in contention. Well, I know here we're going from heavy Malcolm X and Kareem. Now we're going back to the Mariners. I know I always, probably like you as an interviewer, Rick, sometimes when you have a pretty heavy subject and you move back to something a little softer. Anyhow, but that's part of interviewing. M's are a half a game out. They have 3 more games left. Let me package a question for you, Rick. So I went Monday night. There were about 12,000 fans in the stadium. Last night, there were about 17,000 fans in the stadium. Do these low attendance numbers, relatively low attendance numbers, reflect a lack of fan interest? B, is it more COVID reasons why people are not going to these Mariner pennant race type games? Or C, is it more a frustration with the Mariners organization, just with how subpar the franchise has been the last 20 years, or just a combination of all those reasons? What do you think of these kind of low crowds right now?
Yeah. I would think a combination of that, but honestly, Paul, I mean, everybody loves a winner, but the Mariners, I mean, have had the longest alone making the playoffs of any sports team, a major sports team. You're talking about basketball, football, baseball, hockey. And people, and you have some diehards. I mean, thank God you got 17,000 out there, given what the history has been over the last 20 years. But I think it's exciting. I mean, I am not a huge baseball fan, partly because at 10, 11 years old, I can't remember what it was. I got cut. So I was like, okay, I'm done with that game. but no, all kidding aside, this is incredibly exciting. I'm like, my God, can you believe this? And I mean, and they're delivering, and you're talking about 3 games left, and this is you got to go out there and got to do it. You got to.
I like these guys. I like Crawford. I like France. I think they're fun guys. They have a little bit of 1995 magic. Then we'll see.
If I was going to say that, and that's exciting for the fans. So hopefully you'll get more fans out. But I mean, the franchise overall has to turn the corner and become, a winning franchise. Again, if you want to, I mean, you think back in the with Griffey and Randy Johnson and all those guys. I mean, man, you had huge crowds, but I mean, they were winning. They drew them in.
Rick, I got time for a few more questions?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, great. Have a great time. All right, Rick, this is a heavy subject here. I want to get your opinion on this. So NBA player, Orlando Magic forward, Jonathan Isaac, I believe this week, emerge as a leading opponent of an NBA vaccine mandate and restrictions on vaccinated players. And I'm seeing like guys like Ted Cruz are applauding, all these like conservative leaning, kind of anti-vaxxer or anti-mandate people are like embracing Jonathan Isaac. So I'm going to read you a tweet from Jamil Hill, the famous sports reporter. She's a character. I like reading her because she makes you think. Here's what Jamil Hill wrote about Jonathan Isaac, and I want to get your opinion on this. Jamil Hill's tweet that she tweeted a couple days ago. I would love to know if Jonathan discussed his hesitancy with an actual doctor. I'm guessing now, because if he did, he would know the antibodies from COVID don't last. Also, his biggest problem, Hill referring to Isaac, seems to be people criticize him for not being vaccinated, which seems childish. What do you think of Jamil Hill's tweet about Jonathan Isaac's anti-vax position?
I think right on the money.
Wow.
Here's the problem. You mentioned Ted Cruz, and I'm gonna just say, those bozos. I mean, I spoke to, as I mentioned, I'm at Seattle Academy. Spoke to our 10th grade students. They were at a retreat, and I said, I have so much hope for you kids coming up, because we need to get rid of the old guard that makes up Congress, because they're acting like 3-year-olds. They can't get along. If it's not my way, it's no way. And people that are upset about people wearing masks or mask mandates. I would ask this question: if you look in the medical field and you go into a surgery, an operating room, the doctor and everybody are wearing masks. And the reason they're wearing masks is so there is not a spread of germs and disease. I mean, it's just common sense. I have my brother's a retired doctor, Lenny, and he's got multiple myeloma. And this last 16 months or so, because of the mask mandates, he has gotten sick far less. And he said, moving forward, that's going to be my new normal. You look at the cases of the flu last year were minuscule, almost non-existent, again, because we're wearing masks. And then you go into the vaccines. And I have a personal story at being vaccinated, being involved in education and being an educator. I was vaccinated my second shot in April. I got COVID the end of June, early July. Now, I attribute the fact that I was vaccinated to two things. Number one, it was extremely mild. And I'm at that age now, 59, almost 60, where could be. I mean, I'm thank God, healthy and what have you. But it was extremely mild. Did not have a fever. No one in my house, and I was in the house for at least a week, not knowing. No one in the house caught it. And I attribute that to being vaccinated. And trust me, when I'm eligible for the booster, I'm going to get the booster. And it's a matter of us thinking about more than self, number one. But then the second thing is, a lot of those politicians that are like Ted Cruz and what have you, I bet you he's vaccinated, his kids are vaccinated, and he's not sending them to a school that's not having a mask mandate. But yet they go on for their votes. And again, this goes back to what we talked about integrity, like Muhammad Ali and Kareem and Jim Brown and what have you. These are people that are going to stand up. The ones I just mentioned, the athletes, regardless of what the public thinks, regardless of what the ramifications are, because it's right. And unfortunately, and I look at Kyrie Irving and Kyrie saying, this is personal, what have you. No, it's not personal. Because others are affected. And trust me, if I get on a plane or I go somewhere and someone's not wearing a mask, they won't hear it from me. And trust me, I hope somebody has a problem with me wearing a mask. Give me a reason to take out my frustration the way my people have been treated over the last 400 years. Paul, that won't be a pretty sight.
Right.
I mean,
no, I understand.
It's just, but my point being is that, we have to think about others. And unfortunately, the US in particular is a me society. It's not about, and one of the things Malcolm X said, am I my brother's keeper? And meaning, I have to care for my fellow mankind. And we focus on the things that are different, but you and I, a little bit different age, different ethnic background, what have you, but there's so much more about us that's alike. That's
no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
But we focus on what's not alike.
Paul Schneiderman, host of Sports Untold, the 99th edition with Rick DuPree, my Rainier Avenue radio friend and colleague, having a very vibrant, fun discussion about Rick's career and his thoughts on all sports issues. I'm going to play a little devil's advocate because I agree with you on the vaccine I agree with you on masking. We're on the same page. Let me just kind of play a little devil's advocate. What do you think of people that say that Jonathan Isaac has a point? Because supposedly there's allegedly some natural immunity people can get who've already had COVID. Do you buy that spin that some are having on that? Well, maybe he doesn't have to be vaccinated because he may have natural immunity. What's your take on that argument?
Yeah, well, I would say let's go back to the science. Let's go back to medicine, and unfortunately, people have skepticism, and I think that Black people in particular. You look at things like the Tuskegee, project and different things like that, where we were used as lab rats basically. But
terrible.
Set that aside for a minute. Like a law enforcement officer, like a teacher, like a minister, whatever. Doctors take an oath, and more often than not, 99.9% of the time, they're in it for the right reasons. And so let's take a look at medicine. And for me, not being a doctor, I go back to common sense. Again, the masking, if you're in an operating room, if somebody's sick, they're wearing masks. So there's not, it reduces, nothing's going to eliminate 100%, but it reduces the risk. The vaccine reduces the risk and makes it more safe. And that's where we've got to get to. And I think that I would say, for individuals and you absolutely, you have a right. I'm not going to, you have personal right, but when your personal right infringes on me, that's where now we have to have a discussion. And I think go back to let's set aside politics. Let's set aside, left, right, blue, red, set aside all that. And let's talk about what's in the best interest of our nation, of our world. And especially when we talk about children in schools and what have you. And so, I think it's somehow at some point we got to get past all of this rhetoric and let's get down to the nitty gritty, the truth from the experts. And, has our government handled it? Just talk U.S. obviously, that's where I'm at, not any other country. Have they handled it, perfectly? Absolutely not. There's been a lot of missteps. And even under Biden, who I think has done it, the Biden administration, I think he's done a great job, but they've had some missteps. And I think the reality, Paul, is my take on it is that when you look at a virus, it is very dynamic, it's very fluid, it changes.
Very spreadable.
So it's okay to say, hey, we thought this, we made the mistake. Okay. And I think I've heard Dr. Fauci talk about this, hey, it is a very fluid thing. It changes. I mean, it's like cancer. And unfortunately now I've had experience with cancer, my mom, my wife, my brother, and cancer is a disease that it mutates and it changes. And that's what a virus does. And so understanding that what they're saying today may not be the same tomorrow.
Right.
But that needs to be acknowledged. And so I think, you look at the removal from Afghanistan, clearly it could have been handled better. Clearly there could have been some things done in advance of getting people out and what have you. So for me, I would have preferred if Joe Biden would have just said, okay, buck stops with me. Well, what does that mean? Say, oh, you know what? Yeah, we should have listened to people 3 months ago and done X, Y, Z. We didn't, but now we're going to correct it. Instead of, this, whole, well, everyone wants to see us. Yeah, well, we know people want the war to end, want to see it, or to get the troops out. That's not what we're talking about. So I guess my point being, Paul, is that I want to see from, the medical field, the experts, a higher level of honesty and ownership when they make mistakes. But I think for people, that are going on the other end of the spectrum, it's like, come on, just use common sense and let's look at the facts and then base your decisions and your actions on the facts, not on hearsay, not on social media and what have you.
I'm not a medical person, but I'm a little skeptical, as Jamil Hill brought out, that how does Jonathan Isaac know that his antibodies from COVID are going to last permanently? So I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm getting over my head here, but I think there's a lot of misinformation going on,
Well, yeah. I mean, and they talked about herd immunity and let people get it and what have you. But I mean, again, it's interesting, this argument. Are you more protected? Again, like you said, if you got it and you have those natural antibodies, or if you've had the vaccine. Now I'm in a situation with both, but I'm still being careful, Paul. I've got masks. I've got these filters that go in the mask.
No, I do too. Look, I actually bought this KN95 now. So I walk around, I want to have more protection.
Well, Rick, and I think it's important.
Rick, well, I knew you would give an animated answer to Jamel Hill's tweet about Mr.
Well,
Isaacs.
I would say I love her, and I think that she got a raw deal. And part of being a columnist, being a talk show host, or whatever it is, having that freedom to speak your mind. And I think she unfortunately she told the truth, and people didn't like that. People oftentimes they don't want to hear the truth because it hurts. And as we have this conversation, around race, for example, the truth hurts. But, as an athlete knows, and you hear the saying all the time, working out, no pain, no gain. We've got to uncover and get to the root of things, for us to heal from them. And until we do, we won't heal. And we'll continue to have, people that have their heads up their rear end saying, I mean, I forgot the congressman's name. I saved the cut, and I'll look, but basically on the January 6th insurrection, saying, well, if you didn't know what they were saying, you'd think that was a normal day. It's like, oh, come on, dude. And then when people ask him about it, not, did you listen to? Yeah, we listened to what you said, man. And that kind of thing. It just.
Wasn't there a congressman that said that a lot of the people involved in the riots were just like regular Capitol tourists? I mean, give me a break.
Right. And
that's just silly. That's just silly.
Yeah, that's. I'm looking up his name. I'll find. But yeah, it just that's the type of thing, Paul. That it's like, come on, let's be real. Republican Andrew, what is his name? Andrew Clyde. Or Representative Andrew Clyde, forgive me.
Hey, Rick.
It's just things like that.
Just silly. It's just dumb. Well, I hear what you're saying on a lot of these vaccine mandates. I think there's a 1905 U.S. Supreme Court case. Granted, it was a different era. It was before like civil rights and disability rights laws came into existence. But there is case law precedent that a Massachusetts vaccine mandate was found constitutional. So there is precedent on these mandates. So anyhow. Hey, Rick.
And Paul, I will say this one thing to that point is that, it's like when you're in wartime, different rules apply because we're coming together as a country. And unfortunately, we aren't coming together as much as we could and should. I think if we had better leadership at the first part under Trump, we might be further along. Not might be. We would be further along, and it wouldn't be, where it's at now. But it is what it is.
Well, here's something I've said to people. If this is just shooting for the hip for a second, if Donald Trump had handled the pandemic issue even 10 or 15% better, he could have won. He had an opportunity to really be a statesman, and he could not. He just was not capable of coming through.
Yeah, you have to know that he was not capable.
Yeah, not capable of doing it. Yeah. Hey, Rick, I told a friend in the Mariners game on Monday night that I like hockey, but I don't know the infield fly rules of hockey. And I'm going to go to some cracking games. I'm looking forward to it. But I wanted to ask you, you already kind of answered the question, if you know the infield fly rules of hockey, but do you see yourself following the team? You see yourself learning the sport and following the other team rosters and stuff?
That's a good question, Paul. My comment has always been, and part of my grammar, being a little sarcastic, but you ain't seeing no brothers out there skating, But with that said, you are seeing more and more black players in the NHL, number one, which is really cool. But it's a game I have not followed hockey, not been a fan. However, a few years ago, as part of our Seattle Academy, the seniors do a trip to the Yukon, and my last year there, the weather was warmer than normal, so we had to change the trip, and we came back into Whitehorse, the city, and they have a big adult hockey tournament going on, and we kind of hung out and watched it, and it was really cool. It was exciting, and I really, I'm really excited to see the Kraken because they've done a lot of community outreach, and they have a first in that their play-by-play announcer is, and you brought this up to me when it first happened, an African-American black man. They also have just hired a black female as the in-arena PA announcer, Sharon Nyree Williams. So they
also have an African-American TV guy. So could you see, Rick, the Kraken becoming maybe a hockey franchise that more people of color could embrace? Could you see this thing taking off in the 2020s?
They certainly are trying to do the community outreach, introduce themselves to the community, and make it a family friendly environment. It remains to be seen if that'll happen. But it's I mean, you're talking NHL, man. This is the pros. This is the real deal.
It's the real deal.
Yeah, and you look at what is the Climate Change Arena now is about ready to open up, and they're going to be in just an incredibly beautiful facility. So I plan to get out and for no other reason to hear my friend Sharon do the PA, which is exciting. And
let's try to go to the game together, Rick. Let's try to go to the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. Yeah.
Let me get one more question, and thanks so much for hanging around longer. I think this is the longest interview I've ever done, Rick. So it's an honor to have it with you. Yeah.
I think it's because I yak so much.
No, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. I could ask you a lot more questions, but I don't want to take up your whole evening. Seahawks are 1-2 right now. Is this a sign that the Seahawks are just that the whole regime is changing and they're not going to be maybe a playoff team, like the permanent playoff type team? Or is the guard changing? Is I guess my question.
Yeah, I think it's too early to make that call. I would say no. Had a couple bad weeks, and I think but some very solvable, fixable issues. But yeah, certainly disappointing. I mean, one of the things offensively, they certainly have a potent offense and got away from some of the things that they did well in the first half and the majority of week 2 against Tennessee. The offense could just kind of shut down and Chris Carson's a guy, you have a very capable running back, you have a capable running game to control the game, and you look at the time of possession. So they've got to do some things, they've got to fix that. And again, you got to make plays when you got to make plays. And they just did not do that. Defensively, especially against Minnesota, Kirk Cousins shredded that defense and was reminiscent of the first half of last year. But then the defense, they turned it around, and the last third of the season or whatever it was last year, their defense was good.
You're saying don't panic at 1-2. That's part.
Yeah, I think it's way too early to panic. I think this team can turn it around. However, they've got to turn it around now, because if they don't, they're going to find themselves pretty quickly at 1-3, 1-4, 1-5. Then you're chasing it, and you're not in a position you want to be in. But I think they have to. Figure that out pretty quickly. And then the other thing is that they just have not been able to get consistent pressure, on a quarterback. And in this league, and Kirk Cousins showed you give a quarterback 4 or 5 seconds, or even and a veteran like him, when they ran some stunts and some schemes and they were rushing him, the Vikings ran some really good plays where Cousins got rid of it quickly and got some guys and some holes in the zone. And I just think at this level, you have to be able to play man. You got to get up in the guy's face.
They looked outplayed last Sunday.
Yeah.
Rick, I
think it's too early.
I misled you on something. I do have one more question for you. I misled you.
No problem.
So, okay. I still get Sports Illustrated. It's down to once a month now, but I've still been getting it, and I enjoy it. There's an article in this month's SI about how football teams are now playing often where the lineman starts upright and not where their hands are anchored to the ground. And in fact, there was an NFL game last year between the Chargers and Miami, week 10, where the linemen throughout the game were not starting in that down position. What do you think about this sort of change that's sort of slowly going on and how linemen are being placed? Part of it's due to I think head injury concerns. And would you support having, with the exception of the center, having it mandated that a lineman must start in an upright position rather than down on the ground?
I would stop short of making a mandate, but let's take the defensive side of the ball for a minute. You look at a guy like a Chase Young for the Washington Football Club. And they kind of move, reminiscent in my mind of a Lawrence Taylor that can line up on the line, line up back, hand down from a standing position. I think, guys like that, definitely you let them do what they do. Offensive linemen, I would be curious, and that's a question I'll ask Edwin. I would be curious from his career, does he feel like his
There's
career,
a little picture I'll just show you. I can't really remember how to zoom. There's a picture showing you look at the SI, but
the bottom there,
bottom. You can see how that
raise it up just a little bit.
Yeah,
and so is there an advantage for a defensive lineman to be kind of resting, on the thighs or on the knees, and then coming up and being able to block, in contrast to being all the way down? Maybe. So I would say that again, I would defer to, a lineman.
I'd love to
For
get
that, I would
Edwin's
say.
take on that. When I've had him on my show,
Yeah.
when I get him back, I'd love to get his take on
Yeah,
this.
We definitely would ask him
yeah.
that. I mean, you're talking about a guy, 11-year veteran, and could definitely tell you.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's a great guy. Well, Rick, I really enjoyed you coming on this 99th edition. It's great to see you too. It's been a couple of years since I've seen you in person, but always the best. And that's you and I stay in better touch. And thanks for being my guest today on Sports Untold on the 99th edition.
Paul, thank you. I appreciate it. And I will say, check out, this is Aaron Dixon, the Seattle chapter of Black Panthers, and we're producing a documentary called Seattle Black Panthers Fight for Justice and Freedom, coming out in 2022. So look for that, and it'll just be a documentation and their story, the Seattle Comrades story about their experience.
Sounds fascinating. One thing, Rick, I'll mention before we conclude this interview is a couple of years ago, there was a play based on your, I believe, your mother's last days, and it was interesting to see the family history and the young man that played you in the play, and so that was a very interesting experience. And I think it was so relatable. It reminded me of my family, other families, and it was really very powerful play that you were involved in. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Was based on, it was kind of motivated by my mom's last days and how. And I'm hopeful that, I got some really good feedback. We got a grant from King County for Culture to allow us to produce, and thank you for being there to produce and do a staged reading. And literally kind of haven't done anything since, and it's on the back burner, but it really was the experience. And I hope it will when we make the changes and whether it's in a theater somewhere or whatever, I don't know, but the hope was that it would really help people that are dealing with a family member that is
very
relatable,
with
terminal illness, and how it can be it hurts, no doubt, but there are positive things that can be pulled out of that, and so much. I think about my mom every day, but so much positive, that I pulled out from that experience. And I'll finish with this point and just say she was 82 when she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
My dad died of that. It's a brutal one.
It is
brutal one. Yeah.
But she, and this was her attitude, and she said, "Well, I'm 82 and I've lived a good life, and I'm gonna keep on living." And she literally did. And when we got to hospice, I rode in the ambulance with her to hospice. We got there first, and the nurse practitioner said, "Mr. DuPree, I want you to know this is not normal." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Your mother is totally coherent, knows what she wants, is comfortable, and they got her comfortable." And she had visitors. That was a Thursday night. She had visitors on Friday, and then at about 4:44 a.m. Saturday morning, she passed. And she lived. She literally, as she said when she was 82, "I'm gonna keep on living." She lived until she took her last breath, and that we were really fortunate and blessed. So we missed her. She was 83, but a good memory as well, and just the legacy that she left.
It was a powerful play, and I'll end on this note. The young man that played Rick DuPree in that play could play Rick DuPree in the movies too. So
Nate Abbott, we'll get him.
Yeah. Great to see you, Rick. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Take care.
You take care. You too.